Patricia Forde, you're very welcome to Script Story podcast series. It is wonderful to have you on board, and especially because I have a lot of your books, and I've been reading your books to my nieces and nephews who are actually in London, but they are learning the Irish language through Kitty Clark and a few of your other books. It's great to have you here, and I'm delighted to see you in person, or as much as in person as we can possibly be at this moment in time. So
it's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Our Script Story podcast series, this particular season, that is season 4, and what we're doing this series is we're talking about the Irish language and Irish literature, and how to bring people. A lot of people are coming back to the Irish language, and we're talking a little bit about that and how their new Gael Scolan is opening, and people want their children learning Irish in schools, and then how do we help parents with young children to go in and buy that Irish language book and read to that child. Will you tell us about your books? You have both English and Irish language books.
Yeah, I suppose I was bilingual from a very young age. I was lucky enough, I went to school in Castlegar, which was is now a kind of a brack Gaeltacht. It's not a full Gaeltacht, but when I was going to school, it was still very much a Gaeltacht, in that there were most of the children, I suppose, who were in my class were Irish speakers. And we had fantastic teachers. It was like a small 3-teacher school. Still had open fires. It was like somewhere that was kind of frozen in time. Yeah. My mother had gone to school there before me. And I have 5 sisters, so there were 6 of us. And we made up a huge amount of the class number throughout the school. We kept the numbers up, I think, for a while. But it was all in Gaeilge. So we spoke English at home. We went to school, we spoke Irish all day. And then we walked home and we spoke Irish to one another until we got home. And then we spoke English again. So it seemed very natural to me, I suppose. And when I was about 10, my father opened a shop in Galway, and we moved, lock, stock and barrel, 6 children, mother, father, grandmother, and a black and white collie, into the middle of Market Street.
Wow, that was a big change.
Total culture shock for everyone.
Yeah.
But I was sent to the Mercy then, to the Mercy Primary School and Secondary School, which was, of course, an English medium school. So at around that time, my mother thought that we would lose our Irish. So I was sent, I don't know why I was chosen, but I was sent to the Taibhdearc as an 11-year-old to act in the Gammarot, the pantomime. And actually that still happens today. The Taibhdearc still run Gammarot. They still take young children in. And I was just put into a totally different world where at that time, the adults, a lot of them would have been from the Gaeltacht, some people from the Aran Islands, some people from Connemara. And I stayed there all through, well into my 20s. And so I was really lucky. What I'm trying to say is the language kept going for me because I had natural contact with it for a long time. So when it came to writing, I had written a bit in English, but when I was in college, I wrote a play, I remember, about Gráinne Whale. And it seemed really naturally to me to do it as a bilingual play. So I had the English characters speaking English and the Irish characters speaking Irish, which was bananas, I'd say, for the audience. But it gave me that notion of writing in Irish. But I didn't actually officially write in Irish until Forde Fáta, who are my publisher in Irish. They ran a course at the time for people to write picture books. And Tadhg McGonagall, who runs Forde Fáta, his idea was we do this workshop and we'd each develop a picture book. And if anything was good enough, it would get published. And actually, the one you mentioned was the one I did at the workshop, Kitty Clark.
Kitty Clark.
I wrote Kitty, and I was really lucky Tadhg published it.
And I really love that book. You know, I have a little niece, and she doesn't speak, like, she's in London. She doesn't speak Irish. You know, she's not even.
Yeah.
She's not even. What is she? She's only a little tot. Like, she's only 2. Like, you know, she's not even at school going age, but. Kitty Clark is a story I tell her. Well, it's all on FaceTime.
Yeah.
And she is loving it. You know,
she picked counting in it as well. You know, the few things you can do interactively. You know.
Oh, it's great. And every time I call on FaceTime, she runs, grabs Kitty Clark, comes back to me, and we start it all over again. But she has Irish language now.
Yeah. But it's funny. You know, the least thing helps smallies with language. You know, even, I know when my own children were small, and I spoke a lot of Irish, some when they were small, but in the beginning, it was a lot of certain things in our house. I called them by their Irish names. So I remember when James was, my first child, was very young, and he used to look out the glass door in the back kitchen at the birds, and I used to always say "Ainini," and "Ainini" was kind of the first word he picked up. So I think for people where the language of the house is English, you know, even doing that, letting children see that there's another word for something, you know, or letting them learn that word first, maybe, and then move on from there. But it is that whole thing of naturally including it in some way. And that's where books are great, because you can, you know, you can sit down with an Irish language picture book with a child who has no Irish, and the pictures will really help you. And the child will start, even if you're speaking in Irish and they don't quite know what you're saying, they're looking at the pictures, and with constant reading, they do pick up things, you know. And if you're talking about the Madra in the book and you're pointing to the Madra, after a while they'll pick that up. And I find as well, they don't really mind. I often read to like junior infants in an English medium school, and they wouldn't really know at all what I'm saying. They have no idea what I'm talking about, but they will listen because they're looking at the pictures. And then I can kind of pull back and talk about the story. So I think, yeah, little and often, you know, like everything, if it's a kind of a habit, you know, and certain words are used in the house, I think that really helps.
And do you know if a person, sorry, Ross, you wanted to say something.
Sorry, I just want, I don't know. So I was raised in English speaking house, but like you, my mom would say, you know, certain words and phrases in Irish, like August who is in Ira August all the Arson. So from a very young age, I was aware that the Irish language existed, and I feel that really helped me.
Sorry, Ross. I think even knowing that other languages exist for small children is important. You know, that concept that there's another way of saying something.
Yeah.
Because I even my niece in my sister-in-law is Malaysian, so she has a couple of Mandarin words that her granny is teaching her, and now she's a couple of Irish words and she's a couple of English words. And if you keep it, I think, as natural as possible. And there's a huge movement I see in France that for plurilingual books. So you have English, French, German, any, you know, to just mix the languages within a book. It's becoming, there's a huge movement towards that now in France, I'm seeing. So that'll probably find its way out into the world. Yeah.
I think maybe speaking Irish at particular times of the day, you know, again, we used to speak Irish at dinner time.
Okay,
so around we speak Irish, and regardless of how much Irish the parents have or the guardians have, whatever it is, I don't think it matters. You know, it can be kind of fun if you're not hung up about it. You know, if you're confident enough to use the few words you have, and so what if they're wrong, or so what if you make a mistake? You know, it can be like a fun thing for kids. And I think actually that's a really important thing. More important than the language is showing them that there's nothing to be afraid of, and that, you know, to be confident with the few words, particularly as they get a bit older, you know, when they're 7, 8, 9, and they are picking up a lot of Irish at school. And that's where all the kind of doubts and insecurities creep in. Where, I mean, I taught school myself, and, you know, teachers do their best not to be negative about the language, but you, as with any subject, you end up correcting them. You know, you say, don't say that. I think the new thinking now is not to correct them. Let them speak. You know, it doesn't matter if they're making mistakes, as long as they can make themselves understood.
And in time, it's even with the English language, should they make it grammatical mistakes at 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, you know, and we're still.
We don't stop them every 2 minutes saying, no, it's not, you know. Whereas in Irish, we're inclined to, you know, we're inclined to say, no, it's a Lorna Porca, not a Lauren Pork. It's, So I think that's pulling back from them and just let them talk.
Yeah.
And use English words, you know, say, the jam we have today, I didn't like history days. It doesn't matter as long as they can see that
they're introduced to, yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you say then to, I know plenty of people who would have gone through, well, an English medium school, we'd say, or even a Gael school, actually, and have spoken Irish up until Leaving Cert. And then after that, they went off to college, was all through the English medium, and went into work and English, and they're not speaking the language. So for those people who now want to pick up, I suppose they want to be able to read a book to their children, but they're lacking the confidence. They haven't spoken it, they haven't read the Irish language in a good number of years. They're afraid to make a mistake on pronunciation. They're afraid that they won't be able to read it properly to their child. And they're a little bit nervous about picking up that Irish language book in a shop and purchasing it for their child for story time at night. What do you say in that situation?
I say to a lot of people, there's a thing, you can Google it on TG Carter called Scéal an Lé, and it's various people, actors and writers, reading picture books. I'm on reading, I think I'm reading The Dragon, I'm reading Mishachas and Dragon, this one. But there's somebody on reading Kitty Clark, they're all on. So for a parent who is nervous, I would say, watch that, sit down with the book, follow along, see what they're saying. You'll be amazed at how much you remember. Like you said, you did go through primary and secondary school in Irish. So once you hear it, I think that will give people the confidence to then read it.
It's great talking to you because the confidence is coming in your voice. I feel like, oh yeah, we can go out and do this now, because like you seem to have very much an understanding that, okay, it might not be perfect, but go give it a try. And it's lovely to hear that.
People will be amazed. Like, I speak Irish most days. At some point in the day, somebody will phone me and speak to me in Irish, or I'll speak to them in Irish. And a typical conversation between me and a native speaker, I would say, if you ran the stats, it's about 70-30. So 70% of it is in Irish, 30% of it is in English. And I don't mean even full English sentences. We duck and dive in and out. We throw in English words. I would say, oh, we made denna podcast in you, Le Ross, Agus Marguerite, in Tribes. Did you hear about Tribes? You know what they are? Yeah, well, we much denna podcast. That is the way people naturally speak now.
Yeah.
For good or ill. So what I find with people who aren't confident or don't have a lot of Irish, their standards for themselves are much higher than our standards are for us. We have no problem throwing in English words if you can't think of it at that second, or feel more natural to say it in English. Whereas you see these people who are trying to learn Irish or trying to speak Irish, and they're very tense, and they try and say every word correctly, And I understand why. I'd be like that in other languages. You're worried. But particularly here in our own country, it's our language. We don't have to apologize to anybody. The fact that we don't speak it is not our fault. We're not to be judged for that. So I would say to people, take it on. It's your language. It's not belonging to people who are native speakers. It's not belonging to people like me who are fluent. It's belonging to all of us, and you have every right to put your foot in the water.
And I think that's a great thing to hear, because people need to hear that just, it is your language. You mightn't be fluent in it, but it is still your language, and you can have ownership over it. Maybe 3 words today, 5 words tomorrow, and build on it, And it's great to hear that coming across, that inspirational piece from you. It's motivating me to go out and speak the language now. And I'm delighted to hear that, because I want that. I want to be a part of the feel that it is my language, And I often feel that we don't feel that when we're not native speakers.
Yeah, we do. We feel kind of excluded in some way. Sorry, Ross.
Yeah, I have something that I just wanted to ask. So when I was listening to you describe your typical conversation in Irish with a native speaker, I was reminded of something that that one of my lectures said to me when I was doing my degree in in Irish. So when I was doing my degree, we were basically told to avoid erlicus like the plague. I mean, I had one lecturer, and if you spoke to him in English, he wouldn't answer you. And I think I and I don't know about everyone. I can't speak for everyone, but certainly talking amongst my peer group, everyone seems to have a bit of imposter syndrome because they're aware that they aren't native speakers and they still think in English. So even though we have been trained and we are quote unquote fluent, I think there's still that fear there and that apprehension.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think academia as well, like you, Ross, I did a degree in Irish. And of course, you know, the standard is different. And if you're dealing with academia, you do want to be absolutely correct and, you know, to speak the language as well as you can, and writing the language, of course, which is a whole other bag of tricks, because, you know, then you do have to be aware of grammar and all those things. But there, I think, lies some of the problem, Ross, is that people who are not academics, who are not students of Irish, who are just Irish people who would like to express themselves in the Irish language, get confused about those two standards. The thing they're used to is school, where for some reason we try to pretend that we should all be able to be as good in Irish in the Leaving Cert as we are in English, that we can read novels and plays and poetry, where the truth is totally different. We're nowhere like that standard. And for most children doing the Leaving Cert with Irish, I would say if they could pass a good oral exam and, you know, have the basic fundamentals of Irish, I would be delighted. Instead of them learning off reams about novels that they don't understand or they can't read, and being left then with that chip on their shoulder that somehow Irish is not for them because they couldn't reach that standard. Really, all we want them to do is to be able to chat in the supermarket. You know, you want to be able to speak to somebody and have a normal kind of a conversation. We're not going to be talking about the literary merits of Peg when we meet in Tesco. That's not going to be top of our list. Or we're not going to be talking about the wonders of the Tushigilda.
Thank God I avoided Peg. I remember my older sister had to do Peg for the Leaving Cert, and it was almost torturous watching her trying to learn it. And I said, I hope to God we don't have to do Peg when I get to. There was an age gap. There's about 7 years between us. I hope to God we don't have to do Peg when I get to the Leaving Cert.
There was a documentary made recently. One of my kids showed me somebody saying, you know, the real Peg behind the one we did at school, and that the book great merit was just the way all ate it. But yeah, I think that is where the confusion is that thing of, you know, Irish as a subject and something you study, and Irish as a living language.
Yeah,
and I think that's why for kids, you know, things like picture books, picking up a picture book and reading it to a child in Irish shows them that it's not about that, you know.
Yeah.
And I was delighted. I did To the Island for Galway 2020, which was a picture book based on a legend in Galway. But they also did the Irish language version.
Until on here, yeah. I saw both these books. I have them, and I actually got a phone call from Mary Esther Judy from Fallen Star Stories, and she said, you have to see the book. And I said, I'm getting to it. I've actually seen it's come out. It's all over the media. I want to get in and I want to have it, you know. And I was wondering, like, the artwork is fabulous as well as the story. The artwork, the illustrator is incredible.
Nicola Bernadelli, he's an Italian guy.
Yeah,
and
it's
he was actually living in France when we made the book. He'd never been to Galway, but we sent him photographs and things.
Fabulous artwork. Unbelievable.
And no better woman than Mary Esther Judy.
Yeah.
Mary Esther is a great promoter of children's books in Ireland.
She is. She's fantastic. But she was telling me about your book, and when I had the books in my hand, the one thing that I wondered, which I'm still wondering, do you write in Irish or do you write in English? Which is the language you
Very
use?
strange. I always know when I'm starting a book whether it's going to be Irish or English.
Okay.
I don't know, when the story comes to me, I automatically go for one or the other. And with that one, to the island, I actually started with Irish. I wrote it in Irish. That's why if you compare the two texts, the Irish and the English, they're not identical at all. It's more a version, because the Irish kind of went its own way. I had to kind of write the way I felt was right for it.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think the English one is maybe less lyrical than the Irish one.
Yeah.
But yeah, people are always asking me that. Like, I don't know where ideas even come from, really. I know with this one, Michigas and Dragoon, which is probably my most successful picture book. That's been published all over the world now.
I think that's the only picture book I don't have of yours.
Yeah, it's a really cute
Your most successful one. I'll have to get that one.
Again, yeah, it was illustrated by Steve Simpson, who's the most amazing illustrator. He did the most beautiful pictures for it. I think that's why
they are fabulous.
But with that one,
the illustrator is fantastic. The illustrator can really set your story to light. Yeah.
But we were on holidays in America, and we were in this gift shop, and a man came in with his son, who was, I'd say, about 4. And the little fella kept picking up all these fragile things. And the father was saying, put that down, don't touch that, son. You got to break it. And the little fella was getting more and more annoyed. I could see he was getting more and more annoyed. And as they went out the door, I just heard him say, the little fella said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a dragon hunter. And I had my notes with me, and I wrote down, when I grow up, I'm going to be a dragon hunter. And the first line in this is, I can remember it, and it's really funny. You think that's written in English, because the whole motivation came from that little fella, but I could hear it in my head in Irish. And I love that word shellig, which is an old word for hunting. Like fiach, a lot of people would say for hunting, but like shellig is an old word. But so you don't really know where ideas, I suppose, come from, and they kind of arrive in their own language, I think.
Well,
too.
I'm glad that you are from Castlegar, because Thrives Press is in Castlegar, our book publisher. We are native of Castlegar.
Great course was where I was born. We used to walk.
Yeah.
I feel like a cake now. We used to walk the 3 miles to school.
It's I don't know when Castlegar School changed from being the Gael school that it was to English speaking. I don't know. I missed. It was before. I think it was just before my time. It was just before then. But
a lot of Gaeilge there.
There still is. Yeah.
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 But, it was a great school. But like I said,
we can definitely claim you now that it was Castlegar that made you.
It was, absolutely.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was there till I was 10. I was in Ballyband until I was 10, and I was in school there until I was 10. But my mother was the first class in that building. She started off in Castlegar Village. The school used to be, where they sell prams and everything now.
Yeah.
That was where my mother started school. But
I know where you're talking about, the old school house.
Yeah. About a year after that, they moved into what she calls the new school, which is the school we now know. And it was very interesting. We went to a reunion there, she and I, a few years ago, and it was really fascinating to hear her memories of it, of starting there.
I actually have a neighbour that I call into. He's in his 80s, and he went to school in Castlegar, and it's interesting when he speaks about it. He speaks to you in Irish about it, and it's great to have a conversation with him in Irish, because it's lovely to hear him speak the Irish. Do you know what I mean? He has a lovely gloss to his Irish. It's an old Irish, and he would tell us about like you were saying, the fireplace in the school, and I can imagine a story coming from that. I'm sure you could imagine a story coming from that yourself.
We were lucky though. I remember one of the masters, Master Malloy, he was the middle grade room, the 2nd, 3rd and 4th, I think. And he was a great storyteller, and he told us a lot of the Finch Gaeliocht and the legends and things. I would say I've dined out on them since, I've always had them. But when I went to college, and Ross, you'll appreciate this, when I went to college and we studied, the Táin or any of that kind of mythosolia, I had heard all those stories when I was in second class. I knew those stories from then. Even ones like Emer and Dermot and Grania, ones that we less popular, I suppose. But we had heard them all then. So I do think that's a hugely important thing too, is just storytelling in any, whether it's in English or in Irish, of the old stories. It's a great thing to give kids, and a great shape in your head for writing stories. You know, they're a great form. There's a beginning, middle, and end. There are lots of obstacles. It's a nice form to have in your head when you're writing, I think.
Yeah.
Well, Patricia, it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you. I have to say I loved it. I hope we speak to you again another time. I am inspired now to read every Irish book that there is in the world. And
by the Glouch Gaeilge,
yeah, by me Glouch Gaeilge, Gacíle lá as seo amach. And I hope this also inspires people who are listening to this podcast that, you know, what I loved about you is your inspiration. You're able to say to people, it's okay. You know, this is your language. You can have ownership of this language. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't feel that you can't use a few words, and a few words today can be even another 2 or 3 tomorrow, and we can build on it, and we can return to the language that we want to have in our lives again as people who have drifted from the language. So it's great to know that a person of your ilk, a person who's so well, a famous author in Ireland, both Irish and English language books, and has done so well, and can come back and say, it's okay, you mightn't be fluent, but give it a go and take ownership of the language. It's your language, and remember that. Thank you so much, Patricia, for giving us that. It was beautiful to hear it, and it was wonderful to speak with you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Míle of Octavec. Einzeln in your picture is